So glad you stopped by. So anyway, as I was saying, Robert, Robbie, Bobby, Bob, let's go with that. Try to make these videos somewhat entertaining, for the students. Really do, while at the same time trying to get information in there they need in order to learn the math and be able to do the assignments.
Oh, that's really cool. I appreciate the kind of complexity of it.
So back when you were in high school, you were a big fan of math and math class, right?
Sure.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I was talking with our principal, Dr. Guthrie, this week. You did know that he graduated with his doctorate, right?
Yeah, he's becoming a better guy.
Yeah, we were talking about, we've got all these lessons out there, all these great lessons, and some students they're skipping the videos and just going straight to the assignments and trying to do the assignments without ever learning the lesson. I mean, that wasn't you in school, right? You were one of the ones that paid attention to the lesson, right?
Sure.
Yeah, some of the students, they're really sharp in math, and they don't have a lot of problem doing that. If there's something they don't understand, they look it up on the internet, and they seem to do okay. But there's a lot of these students that, man, they have no idea what's going on. You can tell by what they make no sense with the answers they put on there. They really need to be watching the video.
Are we promoting a movie?
Oh, sorry. Where was I?
Your foot's starting to jump a little bit. You better get to your next question.
Right. So we're just about to wrap up the school year, and
What are we doing?
oh man, it's late. I got to do a lesson. I got students waiting on me. I'm sorry. I got to run.
Bye.
Oh, cue my intro. I don't want to keep you a whole lot of time today because you've got some videos to watch for class for Khan Academy. You've got 3 videos this week. 2 of them are like 14 minutes. So there's some pretty substantial videos, but they're showing you some detailed information because you're working with inverses of a matrices. So an inverse, we'll talk about inverse here in just a moment. So let's go ahead and look and see exactly what we're dealing with this week, what's due. Because last week we just had some Khan Academy assignments, but no quiz. This week we'll make up for that. We have a quiz this week. Let's go to our grade screen. Okay, this is the week of April 9th. That's Easter Sunday is this week. So week 31, you have this practice assignment, determining inverse matrices, and then determine invertible matrices, because not all matrices have an inverse. So is it invertible? Can you have an inverse? And then find the inverse of a 2 by 2. All right, so we're going to make it simple, just a 2 by 2. We're not going to get into bigger ones, just find the inverse of that. And then we have the week 3 quiz, which covers last week's and this week's. So take your time on that quiz. I think it is set for more than one attempt. If you don't do well the first time, you should be able to retake that. But that's what we have this week. And next week, we're going to finish up our matrices. And you just have one practice assignment and a final quiz. And we'll move on into our module 8 after that. So we are just about to finish this up. So if you still are missing anything from module 6, get that turned in, because once we get to the end of module 7 next week, module 6 will close. So anything you're missing from module 6, and most of you guys have everything in. There's a few folks still missing a couple of items from module 6. So get those turned in before we close that out at the end of module 7. So we're getting close. I do want to show you just 1 or 2 things talking about inverse matrices. So an inverse just talk about an inverse in general. An inverse in general, like if we want to know what is the inverse of 4, it's the number we would multiply it by for it to equal 1. What would we multiply 4 by? Well, we'd multiply it by 1/4. 4 and 1/4 are inverses of each other because when you multiply them, they equal 1. So any number multiply that by would make it 1 inverse. So if we looked at 11, it'd be times 1/11. 11 times 1/11 would equal 11 over 11, which is 1, right? So that's what an inverse is. So we can find an inverse of a matrix. And they're going to show you this formula right here. If you have a 2x2 matrix with the members A, B, C, and D, that's the 4 items that are in your matrix, you can find its inverse. Remember, inverses are using the little -1 up here as the superscript. This, you might recognize this from last week's. AD minus BC, A times D minus B times C. That's the determinant. So we can also say this, the determinant can also be, that's the determinant of A. We put it in the kind of like the absolute value symbol. Could be written that way, same thing. So this is the same thing right here. 1 over the determinant. That's what we had to learn last week to find the determinant. And right here, 1 over the determinant times this. This is taking A and D. Look, and they just trade places. A and D trade places. So D becomes A and A becomes D. And then on B and C, they stay right where they're at, but you change the sign. You change the sign of those. If it's a positive, it becomes a negative. If it's a negative, it becomes a positive. You're basically just taking -1 times the value of B and C. So this is how you find the determinant, or this one, either way, same thing. 1 over the determinant to find the inverse of this matrix. And he'll show you an example in the video, so I won't work a whole example here. But generally with 1 over the determinant, that means you're going to have a fraction. You're going to end up, this is going to be a fraction. Just like these were fractions, the inverse of these numbers were fractions. Most of the time, the inverse of a matrix will be a fraction matrix. But don't get freaked out by that. It's just 1 over something. If it's 1 over 7 and you're multiplying it times 5, that's just 5/7, right? So it shouldn't be a real difficult thing. Even if this is a real funny number on the bottom, it's just going to be the denominator. So we'll get into that. You're also going to look at this and figure out, when does a matrix not have an inverse? So if we have a matrix, whatever these numbers are, there's only one case where it could not have an inverse. I mean, we can switch these numbers. It doesn't matter what these numbers are, A and D. We could always switch them, right? And it doesn't matter what B and C is. We can always change the sign, positive, negative. There's only one thing about this equation that would cause it to not exist. And that's if this, the determinant, equals 0. If that equals 0, then we would have 1 over 0, which does not exist. So the determinant of A, which is AD minus BC, cannot be equal to 0. Because if that's equal to 0, you do not have an inverse. So not all matrices have an inverse. Determinant cannot equal 0. Determinant cannot equal 0. If so, no inverse exists. So determinant cannot equal 0. Determinant. We'll draw an arrow just to remind you that is the determinant. Cannot equal 0. So if it equals 0, there will not be the inverse. Otherwise, you can always find the inverse of the matrix. So I'm not going to keep you a whole long because let's look at the actual activities for week 31. See, that was last week. Here's week 31. You have a video with the first practice assignment, a video, second practice assignment, video, third practice assignment, and then the quiz. So that's it. No articles this week. It's all videos. But like I said, these first two videos are like 14 minutes because they're talking about how to determine the inverse, which I've showed you on paper, but they work through and give you examples, which is always useful to see an example of it actually being done and then determining if there's an inverse. So, and then the last one, they just find the inverse of a 2x2. It's pretty quick. It's pretty simple. That's like a less than 3-minute video. It's 2 minutes and 50 seconds or something like that to find the inverse of a 2x2. So in our quiz, you are finding the inverse of a 2x2. So make sure you're paying attention to that in quiz number 3. And of course, the practice assignments will have you finding the inverse. So make sure you can do it on the practice assignment. You can always do the practice assignment more than once. If you're like, oh, I still not understanding this at all, it'll let you retake the practice assignment and before the quiz, which counts. So make sure you understand that. All right, questions. Pretty straightforward with the Khan Academy videos. They walk through examples. He's really good at explaining items. But if you have any trouble with that, I'm happy to get with you. I got with some students last week that still needed some more help with that. And so we're able to expand on it if we need to. But otherwise, I won't keep you any longer. You've got your videos to watch.